Welcome. Today we delve into a story of astonishing speed, engineering mastery, and strategic surprise in the Pacific theater of World War II. On a remote island in the South Pacific, a dense jungle was carved into a 6,000-foot airstrip in just 20 days, an achievement that defied all expectations. But how could such rapid construction happen in the midst of war? Were the Japanese underestimated the industrial might of the Americans? Or did they overlook the true scale of their opponent's capabilities? Imagine a handful of American engineers using only 6 tractors, 2 scrapers, and fewer than 400 men transforming tangled jungle into a fully operational airfield in less than a month, while Japanese intelligence predicted it would take a year or more. How did the Allies achieve this feat so quickly? And what did it reveal about their industrial and logistical strength? Why did the Japanese, despite their superior numbers and resources, continually find themselves outpaced and overwhelmed by American engineering projects? And what did this mean for the outcome of the Pacific War? The central question remains, how did the Americans' ability to build and adapt at such extraordinary speed change the course of the conflict? And what secrets lay behind their engineering prowess? In this video, we will uncover the hidden truths, sift through the facts and figures, and piece together the shocking reality of American industrial dominance in wartime. Get ready, because the most astonishing revelations are about to begin. The story of how a jungle was turned into a strategic asset in just 20 days starts right now. Morning of July 20th, 1942, broke across the southern Pacific with a heavy, oppressive humidity that seemed to hang in the air, setting a tone of anticipation and urgency. On the lush remote island of Espiritu Santo, an extraordinary and seemingly impossible transformation was unfolding before eyes that could scarcely believe what they were witnessing. In a span of just 20 days, scarcely more than 2 weeks, the dense virgin jungle that once cloaked the landscape was being swiftly raised and reshaped. Where once only tangled foliage and wild growth had reigned, there now stretched a meticulously cleared and leveled 6,000-foot-long airstrip, carved out with remarkable speed and precision. This feat was not the result of prolonged, labor-intensive efforts stretching over months, as traditional military doctrine might have dictated for such a project in a bygone era. Instead, what was happening on Espiritu Santo was a testament to the sheer industrial and engineering capabilities of the American forces, capabilities that defied expectations and challenged existing assumptions. A small detachment from the United States Navy's construction battalion, commonly known as the CBS, had been tasked with this challenge. Utilizing a handful of 6 tractors, 2 scrapers, and a total of 387 men, they managed to accomplish what military strategists from Japan believed would require many months, perhaps even half a year, and a vast labor-hungry workforce to achieve. Remarkably, no surviving Japanese diary or first-hand account of this specific feat exists, at least not from observations made at the time. Nevertheless, intelligence gathered through captured documents and interrogations conducted after the war reveals a clear, if shocking, truth. The Japanese military had grossly underestimated the industrial and construction prowess of the Americans. Pre-war assessments, carefully translated and analyzed from signals intelligence reports in the Allied Technical Information Service archives, suggested that American forces would need a minimum of 12 months, an entire year, to prepare for any significant offensive move once they had secured a foothold. These estimates, based on limited understanding of American logistical and engineering capabilities, proved disastrously inaccurate when the reality of wartime production and rapid construction came into play. The fallacy of Japanese expectations becomes even more evident when examining the limited and surviving Japanese sources that reveal their evolving awareness of the Allies' true capabilities. During the war's final days, strategic decisions made by the Japanese command reflect their growing realization that the American industrial effort was far more formidable than they had initially believed. Yet much of the concrete evidence, actual construction records, detailed logs, and reports, was lost or destroyed amidst the chaos of war. What remains, however, are the facts, statistical data, official records from the American construction units, and the strategic ramifications of their swift, decisive work. This narrative is thus best told through the stark language of facts and figures, measurements of progress, timelines, and the tangible impact that such rapid construction had on the course of the Pacific War. It is a story of how the Japanese, faced with relentless American engineering feats, were forced to confront a brutal truth. Their opponents' ability to produce, construct, and adapt at a scale and speed they had never imagined was a powerful, game-changing force in the theater of war. The first clear encounter the Japanese had with this formidable American construction capability occurred during the Guadalcanal campaign, yet it would take time for them to fully grasp its significance. On August the 7th, 1942, when American Marines landed on the island, they quickly moved to secure a strategic position at Lunga Point. Within days, they faced the challenge of a nearly completed Japanese airfield, known as the original Henderson Field, that had been hastily built by thousands of laborers. The Japanese mobilized a workforce of nearly 27,774 individuals, comprising Japanese nationals, Koreans, and local civilians, working tirelessly for over a month to bring the airfield into operational status. Within just 6 days of the landing, the American forces had transformed this partially built airstrip into a functional, fully operational military asset. The 6th Naval Construction Battalion, the first CB unit to see combat, arrived on September 1st, 1942, consisting of 387 men and 5 officers. Their orders were clear: expand, improve, and maintain Henderson Field under constant threat from enemy attack. From the outset, they demonstrated remarkable efficiency and resilience. The pattern established here would recur time and again throughout the vast Pacific theater. As documented meticulously in official reports from the naval construction battalions, these teams launched rapid expansion and improvement efforts on Henderson Field, even as they endured daily enemy bombardment. Japanese forces operating from their positions at Rabaul launched relentless attacks, daily noon raids, using Mitsubishi G-4M Betty bombers to try and neutralize the airfield's threat. One of the most telling assaults occurred in the night between October the 13th and the 14th, 1942, when the Japanese battleships Kongo and Haruna unleashed a barrage of shells, over 914 inches of the evolving military strategies of Japan during World War II reveal a growing recognition of the formidable construction capabilities possessed by the United States. This shift in understanding was exemplified early on when Admiral Yamamoto himself made a crucial decision. He redirected the primary mission of the combined Japanese fleet from its traditional role of supporting ground operations into an aggressive effort aimed at neutralizing Henderson Field. This strategic change underscored the importance Japan placed on establishing dominance over the airfield, which had become a pivotal asset in the Pacific theater. The Japanese Navy, facing the challenge of Henderson Field's ever-increasing significance, devised a series of rapid, high-speed destroyer runs known as the Tokyo Express. These swift naval supply missions could only carry limited quantities of supplies and were incapable of transporting heavy equipment. But they were a direct reaction to the threat posed by Henderson's defending aircraft and ground forces. The existence of this airfield compelled the Japanese to alter their logistical plans fundamentally, as the facility's swift construction and relentless maintenance allowed it to operate continuously, despite frequent attacks. This seemingly minor but strategically vital asset contributed directly to the gradual starvation of Japanese troops on Guadalcanal, which in turn played a significant role in their ultimate defeat. The Japanese military's confidence in their initial expectations about Henderson was exemplified by Colonel Kanawachiki. He led the first major Japanese counterattack aimed at recapturing the airfield, believing that a force of about 917 men could succeed in retaking what was considered a lightly defended, partially finished airfield. However, Ichiki's force was decisively broken at the Battle of Tanaru on August 21, 1942, with his entire detachment annihilated in the fierce combat. While Colonel Ichiki's personal papers were lost with him during the battle, captured operational orders from his unit painted a clear picture of the Japanese's misjudgment. They had failed to appreciate the extent of American construction and repair capabilities at Henderson. Instead of encountering a lightly defended, incomplete airfield, the Japanese troops faced a fully operational base, already hosting 31 Marine aircraft engaged in ongoing combat operations. This stark reality underlined the disparity between Japanese expectations and the actual American engineering and logistical resilience. Meanwhile, Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake, commanding the Japanese 17th Army, launched three major attempts to recapture Henderson Field between August and November of 1942. Each of these assaults was based on the premise that any damage inflicted on the airfield would require weeks to repair, thus providing Japan with a window of opportunity to regain control. For instance, after a naval bombardment in October, considered the most intense of the campaign, Hyakutake's staff estimated that the field would remain inoperative for at least a week. However, the actual recovery times defied expectations. The Americans demonstrated a remarkable capacity to repair and restore the airfield within mere hours. This rapid turnaround compelled Japanese strategists to undergo a fundamental reassessment of American engineering and logistical capabilities, a realization that would resonate through subsequent Japanese military planning. As American forces advanced into the Central Pacific in 1943, the critical difference in construction speed became increasingly evident to Japanese defenders, exposing a significant strategic disadvantage. This stark contrast was vividly demonstrated during the Gilbert Islands campaign, particularly at Tarawa, which proved to be one of the most astonishing demonstrations of American construction speed during the conflict. When the 37th Naval Construction Battalion, often called the Seabees, landed with U.S. Marines during the assault that took place from November 20th to 23rd, 1943, they faced a formidable Japanese defending force of approximately 5,000 troops from the 3rd Special Naval Landing Force and the 7th CISPO Special Naval Landing Force. These Japanese soldiers had spent months fortifying Bedio Island, constructing a 4,500-foot airstrip primarily through manual labor, a Herculean effort that had taken several months to complete. Remarkably, within just 15 hours of landing, the Naval Construction Battalion had transformed the heavily fortified, battle-damaged airfield into a functional operational base. This rapid turnaround was not a mere estimate or an exaggerated claim designed to boost morale. It was thoroughly documented in official action reports submitted by the Naval Construction Battalion, providing clear evidence of the incredible speed and efficiency of American engineering troops under combat conditions. While we do not have personal diary entries from the Japanese defenders who witnessed this extraordinary feat firsthand, most of whom lost their lives in the final, desperate banzai charge, the strategic implications of the Seabees' achievement were immediately apparent to the Japanese High Command. Subsequent intelligence reports captured later in the war indicated that Japanese staff officers quickly realized the extent to which American construction capabilities had outstripped expectations, fundamentally altering their assessment of the Pacific Theater's logistics and operational dynamics. In summary, the Japanese military's response to American construction and repair efforts evolved from underestimating their adversaries into a recognition of a profound strategic advantage held by the United States. The rapid construction, repair, and operational readiness of American bases, and in the course of recent military developments, it has become evident that American armed forces have achieved a significant breakthrough in their operational capabilities, particularly in terms of establishing air dominance over newly captured territories. What once took weeks or even months to accomplish can now be achieved within a matter of days, marking a profound shift in strategic possibilities and operational speed. This notable evolution in military efficiency was vividly demonstrated during the operations conducted in the Marshall Islands early in the year 1944, which served as a stark reminder of the new reality on the battlefield. During this campaign, the United States made remarkable progress in transforming captured enemy facilities into fully functional, strategically vital military installations. At the location known as Quadriline, for instance, the 121st Construction Battalion undertook a comprehensive effort to convert the remnants of the Japanese military infrastructure into a major aviation base. Even as ongoing combat operations persisted in the region, the battalion's work was more than just a matter of logistics. It was a demonstration of engineering prowess, adaptability, and speed. Equally significant, the 110th Naval Construction Battalion collaborated on a crucial project, transforming a heavily damaged Japanese runway into a formidable bomber strip stretching approximately 6,800 feet. This newly constructed airstrip was designed specifically to accommodate the deployment of B-24 Liberator bombers, which would play a pivotal role in mounting offensive operations against the heavily fortified Japanese stronghold at Truk. The scale of this engineering feat underscores a broader and more surprising revelation about the capabilities of the United States military, particularly in the realm of construction and engineering, the extent to which American forces could mobilize and execute complex projects with unprecedented rapidity. The Japanese military, which had long relied on their own set of strategic assumptions rooted in pre-war doctrine, had grossly underestimated this capacity. This flaw in intelligence is well documented through a series of translated documents preserved within the archives of the National Institute for Defense Studies, revealing a startling disparity between Japanese estimates and the actual reality. Before the outbreak of hostilities, Japanese intelligence had projected that American merchant ship construction, and by extension, industrial output, would reach roughly 5 million tons in 2043. However, the true figure far exceeded these projections, reaching an astonishing 19.2 million tons, a nearly 400% underestimate. This massive misjudgment extended beyond industrial output to personnel strength as well. Japanese intelligence had estimated the American Navy's total numbers as approximately 13,070 officers and just under 300,000 enlisted men by December of the same year. In reality, the strength of the U.S. Navy's officer corps alone surpassed 219,279 officers, with an additional 120,472 officer candidates and over 234,343 enlisted personnel, more than 7 times the initial estimates. Despite the importance of these figures, the most devastating aspect of the Japanese intelligence failure was rooted in their underestimation of American construction capabilities. The Japanese military doctrine, as reflected in captured manuals and training documents, anticipated that building major airfield facilities was a protracted process, requiring months of intensive work carried out with basic manual tools. Their units, such as the 17th Set Tai, which had operated in the Solomon Islands, relied primarily on rudimentary equipment, hand shovels, hoses, and limited rollers, and could not conceive of the industrial-scale mechanization now employed by American engineers. The Americans, in stark contrast, deployed entire battalions equipped with an array of advanced machinery, more than 140 vehicles, and over 200 pieces of construction equipment per battalion, facilitating the rapid construction of complex military infrastructure. This technological disparity became particularly glaring during the Mariana Islands campaign of summer 1944, where strategic importance was at stake, as the islands would serve as launching points for B-29 Superfortress bombers targeting the Japanese homeland. During this campaign, Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saitito, commanding the Japanese 43rd Division on Saipan, bore witness to the overwhelming technological and logistical superiority of American forces. The Japanese military, which had relied on slower, manual construction methods suited to their doctrinal expectations, was stunned by the pace and scale of American engineering efforts. Saipan's Asto Airfield, a crucial installation, fell into American hands on June the 18th of 1944, just 3 days after the invasion began. Within a mere 4 days, the combined efforts of the 3rd Battalion, 20th Marines, alongside the 121st and 18th Construction Battalions, had mobilized and made the airfield operational enough to accommodate P-47 fighters, a feat that exemplified the enormous leap in construction speed. By July of the same year, even as fierce fighting continued in the rugged mountains of Saipan's northern region, the airfield was under expansion to support B-29 superfortresses, symbols of the United States' strategic bombing capability. The first B-29, a model designated Jolton Josie from the 73rd Bombardment Wing, arrived on October the 12th of 1944. General understanding was that the enemy would soon launch a comprehensive, all-out offensive designed to crush any remaining resistance. Faced with this imminent threat, I resolved to defend the sovereignty's territory with unwavering resolve, prepared to sacrifice my life, if necessary, to uphold our honor and protect our homeland. The thought of being captured alive filled me with dishonor, and I was determined to avoid such a fate at all costs. Meanwhile, Saito recognized the strategic significance of Saipan's airfields, understanding that they would eventually extend Tokyo's reach into the devastating bomber range of the B-29s. Yet what he could not have fully anticipated was the astonishing scale and rapidity of the construction efforts that would follow in the months ahead. Transforming Saipan into a formidable base capable of supporting a fleet of B-29 bombers required the movement of millions of tons of coral and earth, an enormous logistical undertaking. The American engineers operating advanced machinery such as Caterpillar D7 and D8 bulldozers worked tirelessly around the clock, 20 hours each day, leaving only 4 hours for maintenance and refueling. The D8 bulldozer, boasting an impressive 148 horsepower and hydraulic controls, was capable of completing the work that would have been impossible for hundreds of manual laborers to achieve in the same time frame. The Japanese defenders had no machinery comparable in power or efficiency. Their efforts relied heavily on manual labor and simpler equipment. For instance, when the 17th Setsutai construction unit was captured in the Solomon Islands, interrogations uncovered their entire inventory of machinery, which consisted solely of a handful of trucks, a single steamroller, and basic hand tools. Nothing remotely approaching the scale of American engineering capability. Japanese military planners on Saipan had initially believed that strengthening their defensive positions would require several months of arduous effort. However, the reality was vastly different. American construction battalions, operating under the CBS, Seabees, managed to build multiple operational airfields within a matter of weeks. The speed and efficiency of this construction effort struck a nerve of disbelief among Japanese commanders, especially considering that they observed the Americans building while under persistent enemy fire. This capability was particularly shocking because traditional Japanese military doctrine emphasized the Yamato Damashi, the warrior spirit, over material or technical prowess. The Japanese believed that the strength of their soldiers and the indomitable spirit of their troops would be sufficient to withstand any siege, rather than relying heavily on engineering or logistical support. However, what the Japanese experienced on Saipan challenged these convictions profoundly. They witnessed combat engineers who embodied both the resilience of fierce fighters and the technical skills of master builders. The 121st Construction Battalion, originally attached to the Marine Corps, exemplified this dual role. These men fought as infantry when needed, engaging in combat while simultaneously operating heavy construction equipment to fortify and expand their positions. This combination of combat effectiveness and technical expertise was something entirely outside the traditional Japanese military experience, which had long prioritized honor and martial skill over engineering innovation. The shock deepened when considering what transpired on the neighboring island of Tinian, where the scope of the construction project was even more staggering, arguably one of the greatest feats of military engineering in human history. Between July of 1944 and May of 1945, the 6th Naval Construction Brigade, numbering about 15,000 men, transformed Tinian into the largest bomber base complex in the world. The records kept by the Naval Construction Battalions reveal the full extent of this effort, and the figures remain astounding to this day. Nearly 68,500 feet of runways were carved out of dense jungle and coral formations. The island's Northfield section contained 4 parallel runways, each capable of launching B-29 superfortresses on their 3,000-mile round-trip missions to Japan. Westfield was augmented with an additional 2 runways to accommodate even more aircraft. The amount of coral excavated, blasted, and packed down into the ground was equivalent to filling the Hoover Dam 3 times over. To put this into perspective, the sheer volume of material moved and processed was a testament to the unprecedented level of effort and logistical coordination involved. On Tinian, the Japanese forces, commanded by Colonel Kyoichi Ogata, numbered approximately 9,000 troops, most of whom perished in the island's fierce defense. Yet even during the ongoing battle, the remarkable pace of American construction was undeniable. When the Americans launched their assault on July 24, 1944, the Seabees landed alongside the initial waves of attack, ready to begin their work. By August 1st of that same year, while Japanese forces still held the southern portions of Tinian, U.S. engineers had already begun repairing and extending the Japanese-built airstrips at Northfield, transforming them into formidable runways suitable for the heavy bombers. The Japanese had initially constructed their airfields over many months, relying heavily on forced labor brought in from Shamros and Korea. The rapid American expansion and improvement of these facilities, done while actively fighting the detailed engineering report originating from Tinian, which was translated and analyzed by ATIS, offered a comprehensive account of the island's construction methods during that period. It described how the labor-intensive process primarily involved manually crushing coral, mixing concrete by hand, and utilizing basic tools such as picks and shovels. According to the report, expanding a runway by just 1,000 feet would necessitate a workforce of roughly 1,000 laborers dedicated to this task for a full 2-month period. Remarkably, American engineers and construction crews, notably the CBS, Construction Battalion, units, managed to extend Tinian's runways by approximately 4,000 feet in less than 30 days, showcasing a profound difference in construction speed and efficiency. The rapid expansion of the runway capacity undoubtedly had a substantial psychological impact on the surviving Japanese personnel, many of whom relied on prisoner interrogations conducted by the Office of Naval Intelligence to gauge American capabilities. While these interrogations primarily aimed to gather military intelligence rather than detailed construction insights, several prisoners, independently and without prompting, expressed their amazement at the advanced machinery used by the Americans. One captured member of a naval construction unit succinctly admitted, "We could not compete with the U.S. Navy method that employed bulldozers and power shovels versus our method that relied on shovel and scoop carried out by humans." This statement vividly illustrates the technological gap between the two sides and the formidable advantage that mechanized equipment provided. Among the Japanese officers, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, who commanded the defending forces on Iwima, was arguably the most well-informed about American industrial and logistical capabilities. His background included serving as a military attaché in Washington, D.C. from 1928 to 1930, during which he traveled extensively throughout the United States. His correspondence from that period, later published as Letters from the Commander-in-Chief, provides some of the rare insights into Japanese perceptions of American technological prowess during the war. On February 19, 1945, when American Marines launched their assault on Iwima, Kuribayashi commanded roughly 21,000 Japanese defenders. Over the preceding months, he had painstakingly prepared the island's defenses, transforming it into a heavily fortified underground stronghold. Japanese construction units laid down approximately 11 miles of tunnels, built underground command posts, and concealed artillery positions, representing one of the most extensive Japanese construction efforts of the war, accomplished over many painstaking months. The American approach to construction and military engineering, by contrast, reflected a different strategic philosophy centered on rapidity and efficiency rather than concealment. The Americans prioritized speed of construction and utilized mechanical power, such as bulldozers and other heavy machinery, over manual labor. During the assault, units from the 31st and 133rd Naval Construction Battalions, NCBs, landed with the invading forces, embodying this mechanized approach. The 133rd NCB, attached to the 4th Marine Division, suffered the highest casualties in the history of naval construction battalions, losing around 40 men killed, 156 wounded, and 48 evacuated due to sickness, out of approximately 1,100 personnel. Despite these losses and the ongoing fierce combat, construction efforts proceeded with astonishing pace, to the point that Japanese engineers could hardly have imagined such rapid progress. Within days of the initial landings, damaged Japanese airfields were being repaired and brought back into operational status. By February 26th, just 1 week following the initial D-Day landing, the first American aircraft, a single OY-1 artillery spotter, touched down on the restored airfield. Even amidst ongoing combat operations, the pace of construction was relentless. By March 4th, while the battle persisted fiercely, the first B-29 Superfortress made an emergency landing on Iwima. The aircraft from the 9th Bombardment Group had been damaged during an attack over Tokyo and was unable to return to the mainland. The swift repairs to Iwima's airfield not only saved the aircraft, but also the lives of its crew. Unfortunately, Kurabayashi did not live to observe or record his thoughts on the contrasting capabilities of American industrial and military engineering. He perished during the final Japanese assault on Ma, leaving behind a legacy of determined resistance and strategic ingenuity. On April 1st, 1945, launched their formidable assault on Okinawa, an island that would soon become a testament to the extraordinary capabilities of American military engineering and logistical prowess. From the very moment landing operations commenced, the invading forces wasted no time in securing strategic locations, including the crucial airfields of Kadena and Yontan, targets that, astonishingly, the Japanese had left surprisingly lightly defended and could not adequately anticipate being so quickly seized. These airfields, which initially seemed like secondary objectives, rapidly transformed into vital hubs for the American war effort, thanks to the relentless and highly efficient construction efforts that followed. Within a mere matter of hours after the initial landings, American engineers and construction units had already begun their relentless work, quickly turning what had been mere captured terrain into fully functional airstrips. By the start of April 3rd, just 2 days after the landings, teams from the 58th Battalion of the Construction Battalion Service, commonly known as the Seabees, along with units from the 1901 Aviation Engineer Battalion, were hard at work repairing, extending, and improving these airfields. Their rapid progress was nothing short of remarkable, especially considering the hostile environment and ongoing combat operations. Thanks to their swift efforts, by the end of that week, fighter aircraft from the United States were already operational from both airfields, offering crucial close air support that proved indispensable for the advancing ground forces. The scale of the construction effort that unfolded in the weeks and months after was unparalleled in military history up to that point. An estimated 95,000 personnel from the United States Army and Navy dedicated themselves entirely to the task, transforming the island into a sprawling military hub. The ambitious plans called for creating facilities capable of supporting around 4,000 aircraft, an enormous logistical challenge. The various engineering brigades, including the 8th, 10th, 70th, and 11th Naval Construction Brigades, collaborated to build not only airstrips but also a comprehensive infrastructure that would sustain a major military city. This included the construction of entire port facilities capable of handling large ships and supply vessels, ammunition depots, hospitals to treat casualties, and extensive supply depots to sustain prolonged operations. In essence, these efforts resulted in the rapid development of an entire complex of military installations, transforming Okinawa into a strategic base of operations that could support sustained offensive and defensive campaigns. As the battle raged fiercely around them, Japanese military observers, particularly Colonel Hirome Yahara, the senior operations officer of Japan's 32nd Army, witnessed firsthand the extent of American construction capabilities that far exceeded anything they had previously envisioned or prepared for. Yahara's unique perspective was invaluable. Unlike many high-ranking Japanese officers who often relied on outdated intelligence or lacked detailed insight into American engineering efforts, Yahara survived the battle and later documented his observations in his memoirs titled The Battle for Okinawa. His account provides one of the rare detailed Japanese viewpoints on the scale and sophistication of American operations during the campaign. Yahara himself had an unusually nuanced understanding of American military strengths, having served as an exchange officer in the United States between 1933 and 1935. During this period, he studied at Fort Moultrie and traveled extensively across the United States, observing American military installations and infrastructure firsthand. His pre-war assessments of American capabilities were notably more refined than those held by most of his Japanese counterparts. Still, even with this advanced knowledge, what Yahara witnessed during the Okinawa campaign surpassed his expectations. The level of American engineering ingenuity and logistical coordination was staggering, and it became increasingly clear that the United States possessed the ability to rapidly construct and establish fully operational military bases in environments that were initially hostile and challenging. The astonishing volume of construction at Okinawa became evident very early in the campaign. In the span of just a few hours on April the 1st, American forces had secured key airfields, Kadena and Yontan, that Japanese defenders had inexplicably left largely unfortified and vulnerable. This early victory set the stage for the subsequent massive scale of construction activities that would follow. By April the 3rd, within merely a couple of days, teams of engineers and construction personnel were already at work repairing damage and expanding these vital airfields. Their efforts continued intensively, and by the end of the first week, American fighter aircraft were flying sorties from both airstrips, providing critical support for advancing ground forces and turning the tide of the battle. The undertaking was monumental, involving the dedicated efforts of nearly 100,000 military engineers and construction workers from the United States. These personnel worked tirelessly, and over time, their collective efforts culminated in the creation of a fully functional military infrastructure that would serve the needs of the United States advancing forces for the duration of the Okinawa campaign. The scope of their work included building not just runways suitable for the most advanced aircraft, but also establishing entire port facilities capable of handling large ships, ammunition dumps for supplies and munitions, medical facilities to care for thousands of casualties, and extensive supply depots to sustain ongoing operations. During the course of the Pacific War, the ability of American forces to establish operational bases far outpaced the Japanese military's capacity to launch effective counterattacks. An illustrative example can be seen in the account of the Japanese offensive on April the 19th, which vividly demonstrated the futility of attempting to assault well-cushioned American positions that were being continuously reinforced and supplied through the swift construction of new facilities. These rapidly erected bases allowed the Allies to maintain a strategic advantage that grew increasingly difficult for Japanese forces to contend with, rendering their counteroffensive efforts largely ineffective. What Yahara observed and perhaps struggled to fully express was a profound distinction in military philosophy between the two adversaries. The Japanese approach to warfare placed significant emphasis on the spiritual and ideological elements, particularly the warrior spirit, which was believed capable of overcoming material shortcomings such as inadequate equipment or limited logistical support. This mindset celebrated the resilience, determination, and fighting spirit of the Japanese soldier, almost transcending the material realities of war. In stark contrast, American military doctrine was founded on the principle of integrating combat power with industrial capability. The United States had cultivated an extensive industrial base that allowed for the rapid construction of vital military infrastructure, including airstrips, supply depots, and bases, through organized effort and technological ingenuity. This pragmatic focus on material strength and engineering efficiency was a hallmark of U.S. operations in the Pacific. One of the most remarkable embodiments of American engineering prowess was the Combat Battalion Staff, a unique force composed of combat engineers who could wield rifles with the same proficiency as they operated bulldozers. Their organization was a seamless blend of military discipline and civilian construction expertise, enabling them to undertake complex infrastructure projects directly on the battlefield. These units embodied the strategic advantage of American technological and logistical superiority. In sharp contrast, the Japanese forces lacked any equivalent to these highly organized engineering units. Their construction efforts were limited to either military engineers, equipped with minimal gear, or civilian laborers conscripted into service, who possessed little or no combat training. For instance, when the Japanese 17th Infantry Regiment was captured in the Solomon Islands, interrogations revealed that its members were neither trained soldiers nor equipped for construction work. They were essentially unarmed laborers, devoid of the combat skills that characterized the American construction battalions. The full scope of Japanese intelligence deficiencies concerning American industrial and construction capabilities only came to light after the war. The Strategic Bombing Survey, conducted from 1945 to 1946, included comprehensive interrogations of Japanese military and civilian officials, as well as the analysis of captured documents translated by the Army Technical Intelligence Service, ATIS. These sources exposed how fundamentally Japanese military strategists had misunderstood the scale and speed of American infrastructure development. During post-war interrogations, Vice Admiral Shigeru Fukuomi, who served as the Chief of Staff of the Japanese Combined Fleet and later commanded the Second Air Fleet, acknowledged that Japanese naval planning had never envisioned the rapid pace at which Americans could build and operationalize new bases. The Japanese pre-war doctrine rested on the assumption that Capturing an island would secure a defensible position that could be held for months, allowing reinforcements to arrive and bolster defenses. This strategic model depended on a gradual process where fixed positions provided a stable foothold in enemy territory. However, the reality was quite different. The United States demonstrated an extraordinary capacity to transform captured islands into strategic offensive bases within mere days or weeks. This rapid turnaround completely invalidated the Japanese concept of static, long-term holding of captured territory. The disparity between expected and actual construction times was starkly evident in the numbers. For example, Japanese planners estimated that constructing a 6,000-foot runway capable of handling heavy bombers would require anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 laborers working steadily over a period of 3 to 6 months. Conversely, American combat battalion staff units achieved the same feat with only around 1,100 men in approximately 20 days. This 5 to 6-fold increase in efficiency, combined with the American capability to deploy multiple construction battalions simultaneously across different sites, propelled their construction efforts at a pace that Japanese military strategists could neither anticipate nor counter. The Americans' organizational effectiveness and engineering skills allowed them to outconstruct and outpace the Japanese in every conceivable measure. The technological gap was just as pronounced. A single D8 bulldozer was capable of moving more earth in an hour than 300 manual laborers could manage in an entire day. By the year 1944, the United States and the Pacific Theater had amassed hundreds of these powerful machines, which dramatically accelerated their infrastructure development. Meanwhile, Japan had only a handful of bulldozers, making their engineering efforts slow and labor-intensive. Captured American equipment was highly prized among Japanese forces because of its scarcity and effectiveness. The few bulldozers and other construction machines the Japanese captured were considered invaluable assets, often treasured above nearly any other captured weaponry or equipment due to their crucial role in enabling rapid base development and thus maintaining the American strategic advantage. In essence, the American capacity for rapid construction, embodying industrial efficiency and technological innovation. The disparity in construction capabilities between the opposing forces during this period reflected a profound divergence in both industrial strength and organizational approach. Japanese military construction efforts, in particular, remained largely anchored in traditional techniques, which had been adapted from civilian practices and remained largely unchanged by modern industrial advances. Instead of adopting cutting-edge methods, the Japanese relied heavily on manual labor, utilizing picks, shovels, and human-powered transport systems. This reliance was driven not solely by a shortage of modern equipment, but also by a deeply ingrained military culture that valued certain principles. Japanese military doctrine emphasized the importance of spiritual resilience and physical endurance, viewing manual labor not merely as a necessary task due to logistical deficiencies, but as a form of character building and spiritual discipline. For the Japanese, the act of physically working with one's own hands was imbued with symbolic significance, reinforcing their ideals of perseverance and unyielding spirit. This attitude was reflective of a broader worldview, where mental and spiritual toughness were seen as paramount, sometimes even more so than technological or industrial advantage. In stark contrast, American military construction methods embodied the full industrialization of engineering efforts. The construction battalion, often referred to as the CBS, was recruited from the civilian construction sector, bringing with them extensive experience accumulated through years of working in the private sector. These men introduced modern industrial techniques directly into military operations, transforming the pace and efficiency of construction projects in the field. American engineers employed a variety of systematic and scientific approaches that had become standard in civilian construction. These included conducting meticulous time and motion studies to optimize labor productivity, establishing comprehensive maintenance schedules for equipment, and implementing highly standardized procedures that ensured consistency across different projects and locations. Prefabrication and standardization, hallmarks of American construction, allowed components such as master matting, Quonset huts, and standardized fuel tanks to be mass-produced in factories. These complete systems could then be shipped and assembled rapidly on-site, drastically reducing build time and increasing uniformity. Japanese construction, by comparison, relied predominantly on local materials and bespoke techniques tailored to each project. This approach, while adaptable and resource-conscious, often meant that construction processes were slower and less consistent, particularly when scaling up operations across various islands in distant territories. The American approach's advantage in speed and uniformity was readily apparent, enabling faster infrastructure development in multiple locations, which proved crucial in the dynamic context of the Pacific Theater. The impact of these differing capabilities on the psychological and strategic mindset of Japanese forces can be inferred from limited sources such as prisoner interrogations, captured correspondence, and post-war testimonies. While detailed personal accounts remain scarce, a clear pattern emerges from the available evidence. Japanese soldiers and officers move through a progression from initial confidence to confusion and ultimately to despair. Initially, Japanese forces believed strongly in the tenets of their military doctrine rooted in the concept of Yamato Damashi, an ideal emphasizing the strength of the Japanese spirit and the moral superiority of their cause. Their early successes, such as the attack on Pearl Harbor and rapid territorial conquests across the Pacific, seemed to validate this conviction. They had succeeded against Western powers despite possessing inferior equipment, primarily because of their fighting spirit, resilience, and strategic ingenuity. However, encounters with the more advanced American construction capabilities began to erode this confidence. The rapid completion and resilience of American-built facilities, such as Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, demonstrated that organizational and industrial strength could be a decisive factor. The ability to rapidly build and repair airfields, fortifications, and logistical infrastructure under intense bombardment signaled a shift in the battlefield's dynamics, one that the Japanese military found increasingly difficult to counter despite their fighting spirit. By the year of 1943, prisoner interrogations reflected a growing awareness among Japanese commanders and troops of the technological and industrial gap, widening between their own forces and the Americans. Captured personnel involved in construction units expressed a mixture of amazement and frustration when they examined American equipment and construction techniques. The superiority of American industrial capacity was no longer just an abstract strategic advantage, but had concrete operational implications. Every captured airfield was quickly made functional, often within days, providing the Allies with a crucial edge in the ongoing conflict. This realization marked a turning point in the psychological landscape of Japanese military personnel, as their once unfaltering confidence was gradually replaced by a recognition of the stark reality. The American capacity for industrial-scale construction and rapid infrastructure deployment was a force to be reckoned with. The ability to mobilize vast industrial resources and execute large-scale, standardized and efficient construction projects fundamentally altered the strategic calculus of the Pacific Theater. As the conflict unfolded, the Japanese military found their initial defensive strategies increasingly ineffective against the relentless advance of American forces. The Japanese intended to establish a formidable perimeter that would serve as a formidable barrier, forcing the Americans into prolonged sieges designed to drain their strength and morale over time. However, this strategic approach was rapidly rendered obsolete by the United States' innovative tactics, particularly their ability to construct bases swiftly and efficiently on captured islands. This rapid construction enabled the Americans to execute what became known as the island hopping campaign, an approach that involved bypassing heavily fortified enemy strongholds and instead securing strategically positioned, less defended islands for establishing critical airfields and supply depots. This method allowed the American military to maintain momentum, steadily moving closer to Japan itself. By the year of 1944, the psychological toll of these operations on the Japanese command hierarchy was palpable. The fall of Saipan, a major victory for the Allies, was especially significant because it placed the Japanese home islands within striking distance of the new B-29 Superfortress bombers. This event profoundly shook the confidence of Japan's leadership, leading directly to the fall of Prime Minister Hideki Tojo's government. The military leaders understood that their previous assumptions about the invulnerability of their island defenses were no longer valid, especially given the Americans' unprecedented capacity for rapid construction. Every island seized by the United States swiftly transformed into a strategic platform capable of launching attacks directly at the Japanese mainland. The pace of building massive B-29 bases on Tinian and Saipan outstripped Japan's ability to develop countermeasures, leaving Japanese defenses increasingly vulnerable. As the war progressed into its final stages, Japan's defensive strategies reflected a sense of desperation. Instead of focusing solely on preventing landings at key locations such as Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the Japanese military opted to engage American forces from deeply prepared, fortified positions inland, an acknowledgement that the Allies would establish beachheads regardless of the initial resistance offered. This shift demonstrated a recognition that outright defense of the beaches was futile. Instead, the goal was to inflict maximum casualties during the landings, hoping that the enormous human and material costs would compel the Americans to reconsider their offensive and seek peace negotiations. The strategic significance of American construction capabilities, particularly their ability to rapidly build and deploy air bases, fundamentally altered the entire course of the Pacific War. This was far more than a simple logistical advantage. It represented a revolutionary change in military strategy, driven by advancements in construction technology and organizational efficiency. The island hopping campaign, which involved bypassing the strongest Japanese forts and instead focusing on capturing less defensed islands to serve as forward bases, was only possible because of the Americans' unprecedented ability to swiftly erect operational airfields and support facilities. Admiral Chester Nimitz's decision to bypass the heavily fortified Japanese base at Rabaul in the Southwest Pacific exemplified this strategic shift. Instead of engaging in protracted battles to take Rabaul directly, Nimitz relied on the capability to rapidly establish airfields on surrounding islands, which could then project air power to neutralize Rabaul from a distance. This approach depended heavily on the remarkable speed and efficiency with which the Americans could construct these new bases. The timeline of the campaign was dramatically compressed compared to Japanese pre-war expectations. Japanese strategic planning had assumed that any American offensive across the Pacific would unfold over many years, requiring deliberate, slow advances interspersed with long pauses to build and reinforce supporting bases along the way. This traditional view was upended when American forces, starting from Guadalcanal, advanced across over 3,000 miles of ocean to reach Okinawa in less than 3 years. A rapid pace that stunned Japanese military and civilian observers alike. Each island captured in this sequence soon became a vital logistical and operational hub, supporting the subsequent phase of the push towards Japan. The rapid succession of island captures transformed the entire campaign into a series of interconnected steps, with each new base serving as a springboard for the next assault. Meanwhile, a significant and tragic disconnect existed between what Japanese military forces encountered in the field and what the civilian population was led to believe back home. The government's extensive censorship efforts, somewhat more rigorous than during previous wartime periods, systematically suppressed information about the scope and speed of American construction efforts and the formidable industrial capacity behind them. Soldiers' letters from the front, which sometimes leaked information about the American industrial prowess or the rapidity of base construction, were heavily censored. References to American technological superiority, equipment, and materials were routinely excised, creating a distorted picture of the war's realities within Japan. The few uncensored letters that did manage to escape censorship, particularly those that never arrived in Japan, offered rare glimpses into the soldiers' genuine amazement at the scale and speed of American logistical and industrial capabilities. These communications and the inability of Japanese propaganda to fully mask the truth contributed to an internal sense of doubt and apprehension within the Japanese military and civilian populations. Yet such information gaps meant that the Japanese propaganda machine continued to depict during the intense and relentless battles of the Pacific Theater, the resilience and spirit of the Japanese soldiers, proud and unyielding, were often contrasted with the perceived limitations of their civilian population, who lacked the same fighting heart. For years, Japanese propaganda, both official and unofficial, relentlessly fueled a narrative of spiritual supremacy. Radio Tokyo broadcasts, carefully monitored and translated by American intelligence agencies, consistently spread messages highlighting the supposed superiority of the Japanese warrior ethic, embodying courage, honor, and an unbreakable spirit, over what was portrayed as the crass materialism of the United States. These broadcasts aimed to bolster morale and reinforce the idea that Japanese soldiers fought not just for strategic victory, but for the very soul of the nation. However, beneath this constructed image lay a stark disparity between perception and reality. While Japanese civilians believed in their spiritual invincibility, the true strength of American forces lay not only in their superior material resources, but also in their incredible capacity for endurance and adaptation in grueling combat conditions. The United States had managed to hide from the Japanese populace, and even some military personnel, the extent of their logistical and infrastructural advancements. Official military reports, which could have revealed the depth of American technological and engineering prowess, were often distorted or downplayed. For instance, the fall of Saipan, which was presented to the Japanese public as a heroic, almost inevitable defense of a brave island garrison against overwhelming odds, concealed the fact that American military operations had established operational bases for B-29 bombers during the ongoing battle. This crucial detail remained hidden at the time, but would later prove pivotal in understanding the eventual outcome of the Pacific War. Similarly, the rapid Allied advance through the Philippines during late World War II was attributed by Japanese sources to sheer numerical superiority, ignoring the significant strategic advantage gained by the Americans' ability to rapidly set up supporting bases in newly captured territories. The true story was far more complex. American engineering units had, with extraordinary speed and efficiency, constructed vast networks of airfields and logistical hubs on various islands, enabling sustained and far-reaching aerial campaigns. This critical information gap had serious strategic repercussions, as Japanese civilians and military leaders could not grasp the scale and speed of the American buildup. Until late 1944, when the devastating B-29 raids intensified, morale among Japanese civilians remained relatively high. They could not comprehend how American bombers suddenly began reaching deep into the Japanese homeland when their defensive perimeter was still believed to be intact. The reason was that the United States had secretly and swiftly built immense, state-of-the-art air bases in the Pacific, complex infrastructure on captured islands that transformed the war's logistical landscape. American construction units, often unseen and unrecognized, had established these bases within remarkably short timeframes, sometimes in mere months. To appreciate the scale of this formidable American logistical effort, it's essential to understand how thoroughly the Pacific had been transformed by war's end. Engineers from the combined BRA, including both Army and civilian personnel, had metamorphosed the entire theater into an interconnected network of American military strongholds. The total strength of construction battalion units, known colloquially as CBS, during the war reached approximately 325,000 men, with about 80% of them serving directly in the Pacific. These dedicated personnel built an astonishing array of military facilities, over 111 major airstrips, nearly 541 piers, and numerous other critical infrastructure components. Their efforts extended far beyond runways. They constructed ammunition magazines and storage facilities, numbering over 2,558, as well as warehouses sprawling across an area of approximately 700 city blocks. Housing complexes capable of accommodating approximately 1.5 million personnel were developed, along with massive fuel storage depots capable of holding 100 million gallons of fuel essential for sustainment of aircraft, ships, and ground operations. Overall, they established more than 300 bases scattered across countless islands in the vast Pacific Ocean, a feat of engineering and logistics that transformed a scattered archipelago into a cohesive, strategically vital network. The equipment deployed to carry out this monumental effort was equally impressive in scale. During the course of the war, the United States produced over 50,000 bulldozers, powerful machines crucial for rapid construction and terrain modification, many of which were deployed directly into the Pacific theater. Among these, the Caterpillar D7 bulldozer stood out as the workhorse of Pacific engineering. Weighing around 15,000 pounds, this machine could generate an astounding 25,000 pounds of drawbar pull, making it capable of moving mountain-sized obstacles and rapidly reshaping the landscape to meet military needs. Japanese forces, by comparison, had no comparable machinery or innovations to match the American engineering feats. One of the most revolutionary developments in wartime construction was the invention of men matting, also known as pierced steel planking. This prefabricated modular material revolutionized the speed with which airfields could be built. Each steel mat measured roughly 10 feet in length by 15 inches in width, weighed about 66 pounds, and contained 80. The extraordinary speed and efficiency of American military construction efforts during World War II stand as a testament to the remarkable organizational and engineering capabilities developed during that era. Time and again, construction projects that would typically have taken weeks or even months were completed in mere days or a matter of hours, often setting new records and reshaping strategic possibilities in real time. For instance, the rapid construction of an airstrip on the island of Espiritu Santo in July of 1942 exemplified this trend, as it was completed in just 20 days, an achievement that set an early and impressive benchmark for military engineering under the most demanding conditions. This feat illustrated how the United States could mobilize extensive logistical and technical resources to accelerate infrastructure development in support of combat operations, thereby significantly shortening timelines and gaining tactical advantages. As the war progressed, these capabilities continued to evolve and improve, with each project pushing the boundaries of what was previously considered feasible. By 1943, the 47th Naval Construction Battalion had demonstrated their exceptional skill by constructing a 3,300-foot-long runway on Vangunu Island in a mere 9 days. This rapid construction was not only a demonstration of technical mastery, but also a crucial strategic asset, enabling faster deployment and reinforcement of Allied forces across the Pacific theater. The ability to convert captured Japanese facilities into operational bases was further evidenced in the rehabilitation of the airfield on Tarawa Island that November, which was accomplished in just 15 hours. This swift turnaround vividly illustrated how quickly the Allies could repurpose enemy-held infrastructure, often making it combat-ready almost immediately after capture, thus maintaining the momentum of their offensives. The island of Tinian serves as a prime example of the sheer scale and efficiency of American military construction. Within less than a year, approximately 15,000 construction battalion personnel succeeded in creating the largest airbase complex in the world at that time. This massive undertaking included the fabrication of 4 parallel runways, each extending for 8,500 feet, enough to support the launch of 100 Boeing B-29 Superfortresses daily. Such a base was not merely a logistical hub. It represented a technological and industrial powerhouse capable of delivering a level of destructive power to Japan that surpassed anything the Japanese military could produce or deploy in defense. The scope and rapidity of this construction underscored the strategic importance of infrastructure in the broader context of the Pacific War. The transformation of Okinawa provides an even more dramatic illustration of American engineering prowess. Plans for the island involved establishing facilities capable of supporting a force of 4,000 aircraft, surpassing the total remaining operational aircraft of the Japanese Air Force at that time. In addition to airfields, the construction projects included port facilities designed to support the invasion fleet, enormous ammunition dumps prepared for the anticipated invasion of the Japanese home islands, hospitals built to accommodate the expected casualties, and sprawling supply depots intended to sustain millions of troops. All these structures and infrastructure components were under active development during the final phases of the Okinawa campaign, right up until Japan surrendered. At the peak, approximately 95,000 construction troops were working around the clock to build an infrastructure that would enable the final assault on Japan itself. Despite the immense scale of American construction efforts, most high-ranking Japanese officers who observed these capabilities firsthand did not survive the war. Yet the convergence of various forms of evidence, ranging from detailed American construction records to Japanese strategic documents, crafts a vivid and convincing picture of how Japanese forces perceived and responded to these overwhelming engineering achievements. American construction records offer precise timelines, technical data, and quantitative measures of effort, revealing an infrastructure building capacity that was both rapid and extensive. On the other hand, Japanese strategic decision-making increasingly reflected an awareness of the importance of such engineering feats. Although surviving Japanese testimonies are limited, what remains provides critical insights into the growing recognition among Japanese leaders of how formidable and disruptive American construction capabilities had become. One of the most significant witnesses to this realization was Colonel Hirami Yahara, who not only survived the war, but also left behind a detailed memoir that remains an essential source for understanding Japanese perspectives. Yahara's account naturally highlights the remarkable efficiency of American construction during the Battle of Okinawa. He describes how American engineers executed their tasks with what he characterizes as mechanical precision, often working in advance of the combat troops, sometimes more than half a mile ahead of the front lines. His observations include detailed descriptions of how construction units, including combat engineers and surveying teams, operated in no man's land, sometimes for days, under hostile fire, marking locations for future airstrips, supply depots, and defensive positions. These teams often worked under the threat of enemy attack, exemplifying their dedication and the logistical sophistication behind such operations. In Yahara's post-war strategic assessment, he acknowledged that these American construction capabilities had rendered Japanese defensive positions increasingly untenable. He recognized that the enemy's material superiority, particularly their engineering and construction strength, meant that any position the Japanese forces evacuated would rapidly be transformed into a new base for further advance beyond their reach. He understood that this relentless buildup of infrastructure was the rapid ability of American forces to establish air bases across distant territories, fundamentally transformed traditional naval and land-based military strategies, rendering many long-held tactics obsolete in the process. Whenever the United States managed to seize an island, it was not merely a territorial gain, it was a strategic advantage that extended American air power, allowing it to project influence further westward with unprecedented speed. This swift expansion of air bases compressed the defensive perimeter for Japanese forces significantly faster than they could adapt or reinforce their positions. As a result, the conventional defense strategies that relied on holding key islands or areas became less viable, highlighting the growing importance of air power and the critical role of rapid construction capabilities in modern warfare. An especially illuminating perspective on this technological and strategic shift comes not from military officers, but from the Japanese engineers who were directly involved in building fortifications and facilities during the conflict. Post-war interrogations and interviews with surviving members of these Japanese construction units reveal a deep sense of professional astonishment at the efficiency and ingenuity of American construction methods. For example, one engineer from the 17th Construction Unit, whose name remains unrecorded in the available documents, remarked that observing American construction work was akin to witnessing the future of engineering and military logistics itself. He described how American machines could accomplish within hours what his own team would have needed weeks to do using manual labor, emphasizing the extraordinary speed and technological advantage the Americans possessed. However, beyond individual accounts, it is the broader strategic decisions and operational adjustments taken by the Japanese military that offer the clearest insight into their understanding of American construction power. For instance, their choice to forego defending the beaches at Iwima and Okinawa in a traditional manner, opting instead for fighting from well-prepared inland positions, reflected a recognition that American forces would inevitably establish beachheads and supporting infrastructure, regardless of initial resistance. This strategic shift demonstrated that the Japanese had come to understand that attempting to prevent the landing itself was futile. The focus had to turn to delaying, inflicting casualties, and making the cost of invasion excessively high. This evolution in military thinking also signaled a recognition that, due to American construction capabilities, holding territory became less meaningful than simply aiming to weaken the attacking force through attrition. The famous kamikaze program, which involves suicide attacks on Allied ships using minimal resources, can be seen as a desperate measure in response to these new realities. Traditional naval aviation generally depended on elaborate bases, extensive maintenance facilities, and trained ground crews to sustain operations. As American construction battalions systematically built new bases and support facilities reaching ever closer to Japan, and as Japanese facilities were systematically destroyed or rendered unusable, the foundational material infrastructure necessary for conventional air combat was gradually eroded. In this context, kamikaze attacks, requiring only one-way fuel, minimal maintenance, and simplified launch procedures, became an attempt to continue air operations despite the loss of established base infrastructure. These attacks were an innovative, if desperate, adaptation to the strategic environment shaped by American technological superiority in construction, logistics, and rapid deployment. Furthermore, intelligence documents captured after the war reveal that Japan was acutely aware of the threat posed by American construction capabilities and worked diligently to develop countermeasures. The Japanese military devised plans to infiltrate American construction zones with specialized sabotage units tasked with destroying equipment and assassinating key operators to slow or halt the rapid buildup of American bases. There were also considerations of deploying chemical weapons to contaminate or destroy construction sites, aiming to hinder American logistical efforts. However, these plans never materialized effectively, primarily due to weaknesses within Japanese military logistics and the enhanced security measures implemented by American forces, which limited the success of such sabotage and infiltration efforts. By the year the United States and Japan faced the final stages of the war, 2045, Japanese defense strategies for the homeland displayed a comprehensive understanding of American construction capabilities. These plans acknowledged that any anticipated American landing would be supported by the swift establishment of massive, well-equipped base complexes, no matter the level of initial resistance. Consequently, Japan shifted its military strategy from trying to prevent the construction of these bases to attempting to impose such heavy casualties on American forces that the cost of building and maintaining these bases would become intolerable. The hope was that this high casualty toll might ultimately pressure the Americans into negotiated peace rather than pursuing unconditional surrender, which Japan was unwilling to accept at that point. By the end of the year 1944, senior Japanese military leaders had come to a full realization of the strategic implications posed by American construction capabilities. They understood that it was only a matter of time before the United States could establish a continuous line of advanced bases that would make traditional defenses and even outright resistance largely ineffective. This awareness, however, proved to be too late to significantly alter the overall course and outcome of the conflict, as the American military machine, fueled by relentless rapid construction and technological innovation, had already shifted the balance decisively in their favor. The course of the war was heavily influenced by the evolving strategic landscape that unfolded as Allied forces advanced across the Pacific. The fall of Japan's government, led by Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, following the loss of the island of Saipan, marked a clear turning point. It reflected a profound political recognition within Japan's leadership that impending American dominance in strategic bombing would soon render the entire Japanese homeland vulnerable to relentless aerial assaults. This realization was not merely theoretical. It manifested in the way Japan responded to the growing threat of U.S. military infrastructure and construction capabilities. The Japanese military's reactions during this period revealed a keen awareness of the significance of American construction efforts. One of the most illustrative examples was the fierce defense of the island of Iwima, where Japanese forces inflicted the highest casualties on American troops of any engagement in the Pacific theater. This fierce resistance was driven by a strategic understanding that the airfields being constructed there would serve a critical purpose, providing fighter escort for the B-29 superfortresses, the formidable American bombers, aimed at devastating targets deep within Japan itself. The Japanese leadership recognized that these airfields would effectively enable sustained and concentrated strategic bombing campaigns, threatening the very core of Japan's industrial and civilian infrastructure. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi's approach to defending Uwima reflected a strategic shift from traditional direct assault tactics like the famed Banzai charges to a more deliberate and calculated defensive stance. This change underscored a clear understanding that, regardless of Japanese efforts to counter them, the construction of airfields and support facilities by American forces was inevitable. His focus was thus shifted from attempting to halt the building process entirely to maximizing the cost inflicted on American forces, knowing full well that the airfields would eventually be operational. This pragmatic adaptation demonstrated that senior Japanese commanders were not only aware of the technological and logistical progression, but also understood the importance of resisting in a manner that sought to drain American resources. Similarly, at Okinawa, Japanese strategy was characterized by a recognition that the island would eventually become a critical American military base, regardless of the fierce resistance mounted there. Their strategy was designed to prolong the fight as long as possible, including the employment of kamikaze tactics aimed at crippling U.S. naval forces. This approach acknowledged the inevitable transformation of Okinawa into a vital logistical and operational hub for American forces. The Japanese command understood that holding the island was a matter of delaying the inevitable, rather than preventing it altogether. A key element in this Japanese strategic mindset was Colonel Yahara's detailed defensive plan, which explicitly accepted that American forces would, in time, establish airfields and port facilities. The primary aim was not to prevent construction altogether, but to make it prohibitively expensive, both in terms of material resources and human lives, so as to impose maximum strategic and psychological costs on the Americans. This strategy of adaptation, from initial surprise to recognition of American capabilities, then to deliberate resistance, serves as a testament to the fact that Japan's military leadership was attentive to the ongoing developments of U.S. construction capabilities and responded accordingly. Although the detailed records of their observations and thought processes have often been lost or destroyed, the overall pattern of their strategic decisions offers clear evidence of a learning curve and an understanding of the threat. In essence, these strategic decisions and tactical responses serve as a form of silent testimony, revealing aspects of Japanese military cognition that might not be fully captured in written records. The narrative of Japan's encounters with American construction prowess is thus more accurately told through statistical data, strategic outcomes, and the broader arc of military adaptation, rather than through personal accounts or emotional testimonies. The destruction of many Japanese military records and the scarcity of first-hand testimonies mean that we lack intimate insights into how individual soldiers and officers experience this technological and strategic shock firsthand. Nevertheless, what survives, construction statistics, strategic directives, limited post-war testimonies, and scholarly analyses, collectively constructs a powerful story. It is a story of profound realization and adaptation. Japanese forces saw something unprecedented in military history: the rapid industrialization and organizational integration of American construction efforts, which facilitated extraordinary strategic advances at unprecedented speeds. Consider the extraordinary feat of constructing an airfield on the island of Espiritu Santo in just 20 days, or rehabilitating the airstrip at Tarawa in merely 15 hours. Even more astonishing were the massive B-29 bases built on Tinian Island amidst ongoing battles nearby, serving as pivotal hubs for offensive operations against Japan. These achievements represented more than mere engineering accomplishments. They embodied the emergence of an industrial and logistical superiority that proved decisive once American forces established a foothold in the Pacific. For Japanese military professionals who possessed a strategic understanding of such capabilities, witnessing these feats must have been deeply demoralizing. They recognized that they were not merely engaged in conventional warfare, but were witnessing the dawn of a new era, an era where military victory increasingly depended on industrial efficiency and logistical mastery. The rapidity and scale with which American construction projects unfolded underscored a profound technological and organizational advantage that made Japan's prospects of victory increasingly bleak once American forces gained momentum. In the vast and relentless industrial machinery of the American military establishment was anything but limited to conventional battle tactics and troop movements. Instead, it embodied a formidable force that extended far beyond traditional warfare, projecting its influence across the Pacific Ocean through the relentless efforts of engineers, builders, and industrial strategists. This industrial might was evidenced not through overt combat, but through the sheer speed and scale of construction projects that transformed the landscape and redefined the limits of wartime logistics and engineering. Every Japanese defensive position, painstakingly erected over months through arduous manual labor, stood as a testament to human effort and perseverance. These fortifications, often meticulously built block by block, were designed to withstand enemy assaults and prolong the defenses of Japanese-held territories. However, these formidable structures could be rapidly matched or even surpassed by American engineers, who, equipped with advanced machinery, prefabricated components, and a coordinated industrial approach, could accomplish in mere days or weeks what had previously taken months of manual toil. Such rapid construction was not just a matter of technical prowess, but a strategic advantage that fundamentally altered the course of the Pacific conflict. The strategic implications of this industrial capability were profound and multifaceted. The ability to quickly establish forward bases and supply lines facilitated an island-hopping campaign that bypassed heavily fortified Japanese posts, rendering their defenses increasingly irrelevant and unnecessary. This approach significantly compressed the timeline of the American advance, reducing what might have taken years into a matter of months, thus radically altering the overall tempo of the Pacific War. As a result, the United States could project its power across the vast expanse of the Pacific with unprecedented speed, bringing Japan within reach of strategic bombardment far earlier than Japanese planners had anticipated. More deeply, this industrial-driven expansion revealed that the Pacific War was not purely a contest of military might, artillery, and tactical ingenuity, but also a battle of systems, specifically the industrial systems that underpinned wartime production and logistical support. American industry, with its superior scale, organization, and technological innovation, proved to be a decisive factor. Japan, despite its valiant efforts and traditional military virtues, could not compete with this industrial onslaught, which effectively rendered their defenses and strategies obsolete. Survivors' testimonies, although limited, consistently convey a sense of awe and wonder at the speed and scale of American construction efforts. Japanese soldiers and officials observed with growing alarm how American equipment, combined with relentless engineering, could erect crucial military infrastructure in record time. As the war progressed, strategic decisions increasingly reflected an awareness of the importance of engineering and logistics. Defenses at critical points such as Inuiatik Atoll in Okinawa, though heavily fortified, acknowledged that American bases would be constructed regardless of local resistance. The futility of resisting the industrial juggernaut became apparent even to the most earnest defenders. The kamikaze program, Japan's desperate and asymmetric response to its material inferiority, was a reflection of the tactical attempts to counteract American technological superiority. Yet it was ultimately insufficient against the overwhelming industrial and logistical advantages of the United States. The story of Japan's war effort culminates not in heroic tales of resistance, but in a strategic surrender rooted in the undeniable reality of industrial dominance. On August 15, 1945, when Emperor Hirohito broadcast Japan's surrender, he referenced a new and most cruel weapon, atomic bombs, while simultaneously acknowledging that the war had turned against Japan's favor. This understated admission concealed a deeper recognition that the American industrial capacity had fundamentally shifted the balance of power. In that acknowledgement, there lay an understanding that American forces possessed the ability to project their industrial prowess across the vast Pacific at such speeds and scales that continued resistance was not only futile, but suicidal. This new form of warfare was embodied in the American military motto, "Consumus batumimus," a phrase that signified "we build, we fight." It captured the essence of a military force capable of rapid, industrial-scale construction, even under fire, a formidable display of engineering that seemed almost to rival the very future of warfare itself. To combatants witnessing American engineering feats firsthand, it must have appeared as though they were confronting the very future of warfare, an era where spiritual strength, traditional tactics, and mere manpower could no longer triumph over bulldozers, prefabricated modules, and an organized industrial machine. The rapid construction of airstrips, some spanning 6,000 feet in a mere 20 days, was not merely an engineering achievement, but a symbol of a new paradigm, one in which logistics, speed, and industrial power dictated the pace and outcome of warfare, beyond the reach of conventional military virtues. In the end, the story of Japan's encounters with American construction capabilities is less about what was verbally articulated than what was manifest in concrete actions and tangible results. The strategic adaptations made by Japanese forces, their defensive adjustments, and their ultimate recognition of defeat spoke volumes through their deeds more than through words or documents. These actions underscored a vital truth, that they were fighting not just an enemy, but an entire industrial system, one that could relentlessly build, supply, the rapid military engineering feats pioneered by the United States in the Pacific Theater during the Second World War came to define a new era of modern warfare, transforming the very nature of how battles were fought and won. The ability to quickly establish strategic bases, to extend logistical support over vast oceanic distances, and to construct military facilities at a pace that outstripped enemy destruction fundamentally altered the capabilities of armed forces operating in remote and challenging environments. These transformative skills, first observed with astonishment by Japanese forces witnessing the speed and scale of American construction efforts, have since become an enduring cornerstone of contemporary military strategy. In those early days of the Pacific conflict, Japanese soldiers and commanders, unaccustomed to such rapid engineering feats, found themselves overwhelmed by the speed with which the United States could transform occupied islands into fully operational military bases. The sight of airfields taking shape in mere days, rather than the months or even years traditionally required, was nothing short of revolutionary. These feats of construction not only facilitated immediate military advantages, but also reshaped the strategic landscape of the entire Pacific region. The capability to project power across thousands of miles of ocean, build logistics hubs, and support large-scale operations almost instantaneously offered the Allies a decisive tactical edge, ultimately influencing the entire trajectory of the war in the Pacific. Despite the profound significance of these engineering accomplishments, the historical record from the Japanese perspective remains limited in personal detail and emotional context. This scarcity of first-hand accounts and documentations presents a significant challenge for historians attempting to fully grasp the human and strategic impact of American construction efforts. It is both a source of frustration and a reminder of how history often focuses on the more visible aspects, battles, leaders, and political decisions, while overlooking the underlying systems and capabilities that enable victory. These systems operate largely in the background, often without the observers of the time fully understanding their importance or describing their impact in detail. What is undeniable, however, are the stark numerical facts that speak across the decades with unmistakable clarity. During the conflict, the United States constructed over 110 major airstrips, 441 pier systems, and numerous other military facilities, enough to support approximately 1.5 million personnel. These extraordinary achievements not only facilitated operational success, but also fundamentally altered the course of the Pacific War. The sheer scale of these construction efforts exemplifies strategic transformation, one driven by unmatched industrial capacity and organizational efficiency that turned the tide in favor of the Allies. For Japanese observers, witnessing the swift emergence of these bases from jungle, coral reefs, and seemingly inhospitable terrain was more than just a superficial display of engineering prowess. It was a glimpse into the future of warfare, a future where speed, scale, and logistical mobility would determine the outcome of conflicts in ways previously unimagined. Airfields that appeared overnight and became operational within days demonstrated a level of industrial and organizational mastery that challenged traditional military doctrines rooted in slower, more methodical approaches. This technological and systematic superiority embodied by the American construction efforts was arguably as decisive as any single battle in determining the ultimate outcome of the Pacific War. While Japanese forces could match American soldiers' courage, and sometimes even surpass American tactical proficiency in combat, they were unable to contend with the industrial might that converted captured islands into formidable offensive bases at an unprecedented pace. The ability to rapidly transform remote atolls and coral islands into forward operating locations provided the United States with a logistical and strategic advantage that was difficult, if not impossible, for Japan to counter. In essence, the industrial and organizational achievements represented by the construction capabilities of the United States, particularly exemplified in projects conducted by the Construction Battalion, better known as the Seabees, proved to be as decisive as the most pivotal battles on the battlefield. The swift and efficient transformation of island territories into forward bases fundamentally reshaped the Pacific theater, ensuring that the outcome was not solely decided by combat, but also by the immense technological and logistical system that supported Allied operations. These efforts, although less documented and often overshadowed by combat narratives, played an indispensable role in shaping the victory that ultimately concluded the Pacific conflict.